I had a window of 12 days to diet, so I decided to do an aggressive deficit of eating 1,000 calories per day, and as promised, here are my results. What we're gonna do is break this up into sections, which I will have timestamps for. These sections will be difficulty, energy, workouts, body weight, pictures, videos, measurements, and was it worth it? Let's start out with difficulty, and honestly, it was surprisingly easy. It is important to note, however, I have always been good at dieting on a low amount of calories for weeks at a time. For example, there have been times I have dieted on 16 to 1800 calories for multiple weeks, so I thought this wouldn't be too bad, and it wasn't. Now, the last couple of days, I did have workouts that weren't as good, but my energy and my hunger were in check. And as many of you have left in my comment section on my full days of eating, that this isn't sustainable, and I agree, it isn't. And I probably would have increased my calories after 2 weeks or so because I don't want my workouts, or I didn't want my workouts, to get any worse. But for 12 days, it was surprisingly easier than I thought. Honestly, my energy was good the entire time. This is probably for a couple of reasons. First, throughout this whole process, I got 8 hours of sleep every night. And if there was nights that I wasn't tired, I would take Gorilla Dream, and within 30 minutes, I would be out until the next morning. If you then couple that with the fat burner that I was taking in the morning to give me energy, and during my workouts later in my day, I would take pre-workout, I literally had energy throughout the entire day and had no issues with feeling fatigued or tired. I was lifting 6 days per week and doing 30 to 45 minutes of a slow incline walk on the treadmill, and then I would have one dedicated day of cardio. While doing this cardio, whether it was after my resistance training or on dedicated cardio days, I would either be watching YouTube videos, answering Q&As on my Instagram, replying to DMs on my Instagram, or just like listening to a podcast, which honestly made the cardio go by super quick. I didn't even look at it as cardio. I didn't look at it as a chore. It ended up being super easy. Now, at the end of the last couple of workouts, probably the last 4 workouts or so, I did dread doing cardio after my full resistance training exercises, but once I started going, it was fine. You just have to like get on the treadmill and start walking, and within 5 minutes, I was like, okay, this is easy. I do wanna note that I did make sure to get at least 10,000 steps per day so that my NEAT, or my calories that I'm burning when I'm not exercising, were about the same as they were before my diet. Overall, my resistance training workouts went shockingly well. My strength was the same on almost all of my lifts, and I even hit PRs, or personal records, on some of my lifts for this workout program that I'm running. However, all good things must come to an end. The last couple of days or so, I was getting fatigued like 1 or 2 exercises before the end of my workout. Also, on some of the exercises, I had to come down like 2.5 to 5 pounds. As I said earlier, the cardio went really well for the first week. I didn't even think twice about it, but the last probably, like I said, 3 or 4 days, it was just harder to actually get on and start walking. But once I did so, it was a breeze. What also helped me during those walks was the content creators that I watched, like Christian Guzman and Igor, or Vitruvian Physique, because they were prepping, and Vitruvian Physique still is prepping for a bodybuilding show, and they're obviously, for that, they have to lose weight. So watching their videos and what they're going through and having little motivational speeches from Christian really helped me just stay on track. Now, before we go over the technical numbers, let me tell you that I am an idiot. All of the before numbers aren't true before numbers because I took these numbers at the end of each fat loss sprint, aka when I'm the most depleted and look the best and am the skinniest. In between fat loss sprints, I have been gaining back between 1 and 2 pounds before going into another fat loss sprint. So the numbers, pictures, and videos aren't going to be as good as they would be. What I should have done is taken before measurements, pictures, videos, day 1 of the 1K per day fat loss sprint, and then take one on day 12. That would have been a more fair comparison, but it is what it is. Not to mention, it was only 12 days, and only so much can happen to your physique in 12 days, no matter how little you eat. In a recent video on how to make visual changes quickly, Dr. Mike states about the same.
Anything less than a month to try to look notably better is probably too short. You can try it. You can go on a 3-week diet, same principles as I'll describe in a bit, but you may be underwhelmed for how much effort it takes.
He also goes over how you prep for pictures can make a massive difference in how you look in your before and afters.
You hit the peak wrong, and it looks like you lost only 6 pounds of fat. 6 pounds of fat is notable, but barely. 12 pounds of fat is very notable, but if you do the wrong things with your water and your salt and your carbs, you can look like you only lost 6, even though you lost 12.
And I certainly did not prep for these pictures whatsoever, so the net 3 pounds that I lost won't show much, if at all, visually when you see the before and afters. My average weight the week leading into the fat loss sprint was 201.7. At the end of the fat loss sprint, it was 197.7. The scale isn't always the best determinant of weight loss, but in this case, I think the scale actually did a pretty good job of showing what I actually lost. 12 days with the deficit I was in, I was assuming I was gonna lose between like 5 and 6 pounds. And there was one day that I did eat over my calories by about 900. I talked about that in my last full day of eating video if you wanna check that out. However, 4 pounds is still great. And I think that the scale didn't catch up with how much weight I had actually lost. I think I lost another pound or two, to be honest, but you know how the scale works. There's just a lot going on with body water, food volume, salt, etc., that I don't think the scale actually fleshed out all of the weight loss that actually occurred. And Dr. Mike has also said as much before.
It's not a thing where you auto-regulate really well, because some people say, well, the first week I lost X, Y, and Z. What does that mean? We just don't know what it means. We have to take a longer time to figure that out, and a longer time you usually do not have on a mini cut.
And even if I only lost 4 pounds, for only being 12 days long, I am really happy with those results. Again, this is an example of what a 3-pound weight loss looks like, and at my body fat percentage, it's not going to look impressive at all. So be prepared. As you look through these pictures though, I do want to note that at the gym with a pump, I was seeing lines in my abs and veins that I haven't seen in a very long time. And honestly, I could tell that I was very close to the leanest I have ever been with the current muscle mass that I have. Also, when I was waking up in the morning, I could tell I was noticeably leaner. So in this case, I wouldn't say that a picture tells 1,000 words like they usually do. If we're being 100 though, the pictures aren't impressive at all. There is very small changes I see, but it essentially looks like I just got a haircut and posed the next day. I think a much better way to tell if the fat loss sprints are working or not overall is to look at, let's say, the pictures from the last fat loss sprint before this compared to this one. You could really start seeing my chest striations more, and I have a pretty thick layer of fat that has just come off of my stomach, and you're starting to be able to tell some separation from my obliques to my abs. Then when we're looking at the front flex pose, the waist looks way tighter, the abs are more defined, and you could start seeing my ribs, obliques, whatever, a lot more. And the legs are starting to become a little bit more defined as well. Even though it doesn't show a massive amount of fat loss, what I do think that this shows is that the people that thought I was going to just lose all of my muscle in a very limited time were wrong. I think I look essentially the same throughout all of these poses, minus the vascularity, bigger pump in the before pictures. And I went and checked my workout log, and it made sense since I did upper body in my before pictures, and in the afters I had just done lower body, so I have no pump in the after poses. Now, there are some subtle differences that I could see between the before and afters. Where I mostly see it is in between my hips and my tits. That's where everything just looks a little bit thinner and brought in, and just a very thin layer of fat taken off my back. The measurements didn't start out too good, with my arms looking like they went down 1/4 of an inch. My thighs were about the same. My calves went down 1/4 of an inch, even though I have been focusing on my calves, but that's okay, we'll talk about that in a second. My chest went up 1/2 inch. My waist, most notably, went down 1.25 inches, and my hips went down 1/4 of an inch. That's a net 1.5 inch loss, which again, isn't very much. What do I think of these measurements? I think that they should be exactly what they should be for a 3-pound difference. I was worried about my biceps measurements, but once I got more food in me, aka started eating a regular amount of calories again, I remeasured them a few days later and they were back up to 15.5 inches each, as well as my calves going up. And that could have also been measurement error as well. 1/4 inch is a very small amount and could easily be mismeasured. Is that even a word? But was it worth it? Absolutely. 12 days of dieting, even on an aggressive cut, was not hard for me at all. I didn't feel like I was sacrificing or missing out on a ton of things because 1, there wasn't much going on, and 2, I don't know if you realize, but 12 days, at least for me, goes by super quickly. And just as my workouts started to decline and I was like dreading doing cardio, I was right out of the diet and right back to eating normal calories, and that went away super quickly. I regained my strength back the next week. As I said on my last full day of eating, I am just a normal guy that likes to lift weights. I love the gym and do want to make gains, but not if that means sacrificing going out to eat, hanging out with my friends or my girlfriend at a restaurant or a bar and having some drinks, or going to planned events like birthday parties, weddings, etc. There were many years in the past that I always chased leanness during the summer and I never gave myself a break from dieting. So if I had messed up over the weekend or the week before, I would try to make up for it the next week. And by the end of the summer, that ended up compounding in me being super fatigued in both my workouts and just diet fatigue in general. And I ended up gaining weight anyway and not being happy with myself. With these fat loss sprints, I'm able to dial in for a couple weeks, come right out of it, and then enjoy myself for a couple weeks. Even after gaining back a pound or 2 after each fat loss sprint, I am still at a lower weight than at the start of the previous fat loss sprint. Which, by the way, I plan for, and not like, oh, I'm gonna gain a pound or 2, but I just let myself eat when I wanna eat. And I did gain back a pound or 2, but at the same time, it wasn't because I was binging or I was hungry all the time or whatever. I just let myself have a good time. The constant weight loss, coupled with not having to constantly worry about dieting, has made cutting weight a much more enjoyable experience. Even though it is taking me longer to get to my goal and I am sacrificing potential gains, I am able to take multiple vacations throughout the way, and it has made it much more enjoyable and I am happier for it, which is all that matters. And I realize this type of dieting isn't for everyone, but for me, it seems to be a good fit. As you can see from these results, if you want to do this, don't expect a miracle. And if you do this and you are low on energy and hungry all the time, I would say that you should probably do a more traditional type of diet. Both work equally well. It just depends which one you prefer. I do write personalized plans and do one-on-one coaching, so if you want to lose weight and you want everything laid out for you, I can definitely help. Get in contact with me through either one of my social medias or my email address, and we could set something up. Until next time, deuces.